We're at Downtown Division, and I'm Patrol Constable with Downtown Squad 6. Turns out my accused in this file that I had from 2019 pled guilty, and their lawyer asked for a sentencing circle as part of the sentencing process for him. And so the Crown reached out to me and asked if I'd be a part of a sentencing circle.
The sentencing circle is very much focused on mending the relationship between the accused and the complainant, and mending the relationship between the accused and the community, because only when the accused is living as their whole self in the community will that prevent reoffending in the view of the sentencing circle. When doing traditional sentencing in court and looking at the principles of sentencing found in 718 of the Criminal Code, priority principles are deterrence and denunciation, and that is usually reflected by a jail sentence.
So Matt and his staff sergeant had reached out to my area just looking for some guidance on whether or not they should participate in a sentencing circle, and they wanted to know how to best do that and be successful. So Matt and I went for coffee. It was super easy. We just talked about being human, approaching it from open heart, open mind. I let him know that it was just best for him to come as a person, as Matt, and not necessarily the uniform. I told him not to wear his uniform, in fact, and that would help build some trust in the room and with the people participating.
It was unlike any other court process I've ever been a part of. I've testified plenty of times, but it was not at all like that. We opened up court and then closed it quickly, and then we had a smudging ceremony. And then everybody who was going to participate, we all sat in a circle and introduced ourselves, and then one by one, starting with the people most affected, talked about what had happened, what the accused had done, and how it affected the accused, the complainant, their friends, their family, their life, and then going out beyond them to people like me or other advocates from the community.
We have too many Indigenous people as victims. We have overrepresentation of Indigenous people as accused. We have an overrepresentation of people incarcerated, both pre-trial, and many studies have suggested that sentences attributed to Indigenous people post-sentence tend to be higher than white counterparts, despite having similar crimes committed in a similar fashion.
When governments across our country cut back on social spending, the result left us with people in the community who don't have their basic needs met and who offend to get their basic needs met and then come into contact with the criminal justice system. And the police and the prosecution ends up being the safety net at the end of the day.
It's very important for me to be a part of the initiatives that are very aware as of late to try and combat those systemic tendencies.
It's not the criminal justice system that should be trying to address these social ills. We should be trying to address people who intentionally hurt, harm, and violate members of our community.
It's no secret, based on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as well as the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Commission, as well as a number of other investigations and commissions, that we have an overrepresentation of Indigenous people in most of the undesirable roles of the justice system.
When you start understanding that we're walking around wounded, and you understand that pain and that misery and that suffering that we inflict upon ourselves, and sometimes society throws that on us, but when you start understanding that harm and start working through that harm, then you become a better person for yourself, for others. And then, you adapt to society a lot better, or society adapts to you a lot better, or you have a better interpretation of society.
There is no race that just by virtue commits more crime than another. There are systemic, very real systemic features that make someone's life, virtually tangibly impossible, and that might contribute to them being before the criminal justice system.
I didn't know what to expect for this, and when I got into it, I found out it's a lot more informal. It's a lot more personal and informal, and of course, I learned it was off the record, which was, I'd never spoken about a file I was involved in to the people involved in that file off the record before, and so that was definitely a new experience for me. So my perspective is ostensibly an outsider perspective, right? I'm not related to the accused, I'm not related to the complainant. I'm not involved with them in my daily life, so it's an outsider's perspective, but it's also a really kind of, obviously just because I'm the one investigating, it's also a very close and intimate perspective of the actual crime. And I think that it would have been missed. There would have been some things that wouldn't have been said, there would have been some points that wouldn't have been raised in terms of, effects on me, effects that I saw on other people who were involved, if I hadn't had a chance to speak. I'd say the same thing would have been for the Crown. The Crown, when the Crown spoke, also was that same kind of outsider perspective that was really important to include in the circle, I think.
We had relationships with the land. Everybody knew their roles. We had the relationships with each other. We had relations with Creator. We had all these laws, the natural laws. It was all one circle. We understood we were a part of the circle. And that what I took from the circle, I gave back to the circle. If I go hunting, I make sure I make an offering before I go hunting. If I go picking medicines, I make an offering to the medicines. It's a give and take relationship, because I can't just take. And this is the big difference between mainstream society and First Nations culture, is we're not a take. We're a give and take society. There's that equality. And so we look at that.
What I've learned through history is that they were very sharing, caring people. Today it's different, absolutely different. We're in a world of pain, a lot of woundedness. When I say wounded, I think of people who suppress their pain and then it comes out in action, meaning they possibly do things that they shouldn't do through crime, through the justice system, and in our circles we work with the 7 teachings that, of our peoples, is honesty, and, working through that is really hard, because it's hard to be honest when you first start off, and then they eventually become honest with themselves, because that's the only way that they can heal themselves and get over the crime that they've done, the charge. And, that takes a lot of courage, so that's another teaching. Courage to talk about it, and, and being in humility to learn about that, and because if you don't have humility, then you'll never grow.
We're doing something right, obviously, because people are calling on us and saying, hey, we need circle process. We need that help. And so, yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just helping people discover their inner truths. And that's a big thing, is we're not teaching you anything you don't already know. We're just allowing it to open up so you can see it again, because it's been so covered and so grimed over with everything else, and you forget that. And so when we peel that back and you start seeing your truths and start living your truths, holy cow, wow, life's a lot different. It's enlightened.
I don't deal a lot with people who are really rooted in their culture, or who don't have a lot to say about their culture. And so having a chance to see, having a chance to see how that worked and how much they encouraged the accused to reconnect with that was neat.
Because they got it. It was like it seeded in us, but it took time to get through all that chaos within. When I say within, I think about what my dad used to say. The longest journey you're gonna take in life is from here to here. So when I see that, when they're from here, not speaking from here, but speaking from here, and like, that's powerful. So when I see that powerful moment, it's so powerful that they're owning it. And everything we do or say, we have to own it. And so when I see that, I know they're going to think about it. It's there. It's reminding them. And now they'll know. They know not to do it again. And that we weren't punitive with them. We were simply doing reminders, as they would in our history. They sat in circle. They didn't shun you. They empowered you so that you wouldn't do it again.
And you have to learn how to listen, not from here, but from here. And when you listen from here, you hear that other person's story, you hear that other person's pain, and it impacts you here. And so when you understand how to listen as a skill, what happens is you're not listening from here and you're not saying, okay, you made a point, I got to make a counterpoint. Oh, I got to make a counterpoint. And that's not listening, that's hearing. Listening is, okay, I hear your pain, I understand your pain, I feel your pain. And when you have that happening, then you start making those connections, and this person who's this weirdo, this stranger, or this offender, or whatever, you start making a connection with them. Okay, now we have that collaboration. There's that relationship. Like I said, we have that relationship-based society. Once you make that connection, bang, all of a sudden, the aha moment. And we see it all the time in Circle.
I think it was important that police participated in the Circle, just because in the Circle, everyone gets a chance to say their bit, and there's all kinds of different points of views. But in terms of criminal investigation, police have a really kind of unique point of view, and I think that would have been missed if I didn't have a chance to be there and participate.
We've been in Circle where we come in and we walked into the room, and there's the one party and the other party that's been harmed or whatever, and you can just see that tension, you can see that conflict, and it's just there. You can feel it. The tension is so strong. And we look at each other, it's like, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to do this? Big words we say, trust the process, trust the process. So we get down, we start with our smudge, we say our prayer, and then we start talking about what happened. And we start talking about what we did within the incident and how we could do it better, and how we can prevent it from happening in the future. And all of a sudden we start having this adversarial situation, all of a sudden becomes a collaboration. And when we start having collaboration, all of a sudden we start moving towards a goal. And when we start moving towards that goal, then we have an end result. And when we have the end result, it's positive. We have that collaboration, because too often people see it's just an offender hurting the victim. They don't realize that sometimes the victim has done something on their own. And so they've done something to the offender, and so the offender reacted. And so if we can help heal the victim and heal the offender, then all of a sudden we can work towards solution. And so we can't officially make recommendations for victims. However, we do recommend that they seek additional help or support or stuff like that. And so when we make our recommendations at End of Circle, we follow 4 aspects. We follow the mental, the emotional, physical, and the spiritual. And we ask that they partake in at least 4 activities of each. So under spiritual, they need to talk to either an elder or a priest, We're non-denominational in that regard, but they need some kind of spiritual consultation, and they need to talk to them at least 4 times, be it going to a sweat, be it going to church, or whatever it might be. So they need to have some kind of spiritual guidance to get that reconnection with Creator. Then we look at the emotional aspect, how they deal with their anger, how they deal with their self-loathing, how they deal with their self-destructive tendencies, whatever it might be. And so we look at that and okay, it might be going to seek anger management, it might be seeking addiction counseling, or it might be working on self-esteem, or whatever it might be. And so we get them to go to those 4 sessions as well. And that deals with their mental. And then we look at their emotional aspect and looking at how they can deal with their emotions rather than being reactive. Okay, let's listen to each other.
And everything comes in for the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. So those are part of my being. So I have to always check in, where do I need work within myself? Where is it I have too much of or not enough of? So I'm always trying to bring that balance. So I'm a good person if I'm in balance with those 4 elements that we talk about. The 4 elements: the water, the fire,
The earth,
and the air that we breathe.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of grinding to get to that, and sometimes it happens really quick. But you need that. You need that storming part of the situation, and then you have that forming, and then normaling, and then you move forward. So you need these components of the circle, and you can't have that. That doesn't exist in the courtroom. In the courtroom system, you look at the way the judge is situated. The courtroom's situated like this. The judge is up top, the offender's down here. I'm all the power, and there's that power and balance and that shift. And there's the judge, then there's the crown and the defense, and then there's the offender. So you have that. It's purposely built like that. Now I'm small and insignificant. Oh, I'm whatever. But in circle process, everyone sits in a circle. We're all equal. There's no beginning, there's no end. The circle is there. And so the judge sits here, the crown sits here, the defense, the offenders, the victims, the support people and all that. We all sit in circle. So we're all equal. Nobody sits on a higher chair. We're all equal. And so when we're all equal, we all have an equal say in what happens. We all have an equal impact. We've all been impacted. And so when we have that equality, now we don't have the power imbalance in the court system, and it's the judge saying, okay, society needs you to do this, and this is what's going to happen. Instead, you say, hey, I messed up. How do I make amends? How do I, as the offender, repair the relationship with other people or myself? So there's a little bit of a dynamical shift when it comes to that, and you understand that. And when you're in circle, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing because, yeah, you see people that go to court and they're so closed. Society imposes this, you're guilty, you're ashamed, you broke the law, you need to be punished. In circle, it's like, okay, you made a mistake. Do you own that mistake? Yeah, I screwed up. Okay, how do I make amends? Okay, well, what can you do? How do you heal yourself? How do you heal your relationship with your community? How do you heal your relationship with everything else? And so they're willing to do that. It's a lot different than when society appoints the guilt or appoints the shame. There's no shame, there's no blaming, and there's no guilt within a circle. It's, I made a mistake, how do I take ownership, and how do I fix the mistake? And so when we come into circle process, it's such a paradigm shift compared to mainstream society. It's not adversarial, it's collaborative. We want to work towards solution. We want to work towards healing. And I know with the judge that we have, he fully believes in that process. He totally believes in that process because absolutely, we are all impacted by crime, be it the victim, the offender, or even the bystander. We're all impacted by what our neighbor does. And how we deal with that and how we work through that, that's how we come together as a society.
We've done over 600 circles and in the past 4.5 years. So I'm really grateful that we can just use our gifts and abilities to our fullest to help our people. And I believe we are because there's like maybe 2%, 5% reoffending, maybe going back to the courtroom, but I'm proud to say that it's a small percentage.
Because of the focus on restoring balance and rehabilitation and restoring the individual, not as an individual silo, but within the entirety of a community and restoring that community's balance. When we see healthy people with housing, with proper community supports, who are mentally well, with good self-esteem, we rarely see people with that profile before the criminal justice system.
The judge is still responsible for ensuring a fit and proper sentence. Sentencing circles don't exist in our criminal code. They are not part of the Western tradition of government that came across with the British and common law. They exist in Indigenous tradition, and it is in that vein that they are conducted as a part of sentencing, but the actual sentence handed down is still handed down in a courtroom by the trial judge.
I think there's a recognition that many people will be doing this for the first time, and I think many of the circle keepers will acknowledge and understand that. And I think if you're asking and it's coming from a good place, they'll be able to recognize that. And they'd be able to recognize that you're trying to avoid pan-indigeneity. I know that some circles on certain treaty lands will go clockwise. The ones that I've been involved with have been on Treaty 6, gone clockwise. I know that in some other places, depending on where you are and the practices of the community or the nation, you will go counterclockwise. And I think it just provides that differentiation, just provides for more cultural enrichment and an opportunity to learn more about that particular nation. We're not one nation, it's not pan-Indigenous, and that's what makes Indigenous culture so rich, is it's so many different things.
I know that in the past, members have been really reluctant to show the community their humanity because they see it as weakness. And I don't see it that way. I know that it is incredibly difficult for members on assault police officer files to even think about providing a victim impact statement. But it just contributes to this idea that the police are one entity, that they don't have emotions, that they are not connected to the community, that the files don't impact them, which we know is not true. And that I think it's good for the community and it is good for the justice system to understand the humanity of police officers.
I think members would really enjoy being seen as human beings and not just a uniform as well. Like having the opportunity to sit in circle and be present and talk about who they are as a person and not necessarily that they represent Edmonton Police Service.
I think it's important that police participate in this kind of thing. It shows a willingness to participate in Indigenous traditions and Indigenous ceremonies, but it also, if police don't participate in that kind of thing, we're just being left out. We wouldn't have a chance to share our own, unique perspective, and the fact that they're asking for it of us, I think, is important, and so I think it would be a waste not to.
We really have to learn how to get our community partners to the table because the tools available to a police officer are charge or don't charge. The tools available to the Crown are a fine, probation, a conditional sentence order, or jail. We are not social workers, and we've been put in the unfortunate circumstance of being the last people standing. for all of the marginalized, vulnerable people in our community who make up the vast number of offenders before our courts. We need to do better in terms of engaging our community partners so that they are playing the role that needs to be played by the social welfare system, so that we can focus on the, I think as Chief McPhee has put it, the bad guys.
If people are not continuing on their path of breaking the law and criminal activity, we're not sending more police out to them. We're not just even calling 911. Costs money. Sending a patrol car out there costs money. If they have to go through the criminal justice system and attend court, that costs money. If they have to be incarcerated for any length of time, that costs money. We can reduce all of those costs with a sentencing circle, and start to finish, it takes much less time than going through that whole criminal process and sitting in jail.
Conciliation is not tomorrow, it's today. And it's not just September 30th, it's every day. Because if it's not now, it's never. Tomorrow never comes. So the time is now, conciliation is now, and it's awesome because we can all be a part of it.